So, the Europe Builds podcast is all about uncovering the untapped knowledge within the European startup ecosystem. And there's no better place to be than the Doers Summit, where for the very first time, founders, investors, and operators are meeting up to turn their ideas into reality.
The timing also couldn't be better. Some European problems may persist, but we're finally seeing winds of change, from the new Commission's competitiveness compass to reducing internal market barriers. There's a lot of room for growth and a lot of room for hope. So for all of this and more, join us for this series of Europe Builds episodes showcasing some of the greatest founders, operators, and investors from the Doers Summit.
So I'm so happy that you're here with us today.
Thank you. This is brilliant.
Lovely. Okay, so we always start by allowing our speakers to do the introduction of themselves, because it's something that, whether you're a founder, an operator, an investor, it's probably something you've had to do, right? What we call the elevator pitch. So tell us a few things about yourself and what you're working on right now.
It's tough, right? When you get asked to introduce yourself, because you have done it so many times, it sounds like it's scripted.
Right.
So I'm Adam. I run a company called One Moto, and we're an impact-driven EV mobility startup, scale-up. We're designed to decarbonize last-mile delivery. And there's loads of, I could go into massive details. It's a huge passion that I've been working on for the past 4 years. I've built and exited companies in the past, and I've focused on One Moto to really bring change. So that's what I'm doing. We've scaled to 13 countries so far, 24 more in conversation. We do things differently. Like a lot of EV startups were in that realm of let's raise money and then we'll build. So you're basically raising on promise and a beautiful presentation. I thought, let's do something different. Let's build something of foundational structure and substance. And at that point is then when we raise. And then we raise only what we need for global growth. And that's the situation we're in right now.
Am I allowed to ask which is your favorite child?
Yeah.
I do have 2 children, and I can't possibly...
Sorry, I meant from your startups.
it's
actual kids.
It's just as hard, probably.
You threw me under a bus then. I'm glad I didn't mention a name. My favourite has to be One Moto, and it's not because it's any better than the others, but this one was designed for impact, and with a lot of learnings, the positive and the negative, right? You go through school and you have knowledge, or you get taught knowledge, and it's only with experience then that allows you to have wisdom. And I feel that all of the wisdom that I've been able to apply to One Moto and also mentor and help other startups and founders navigate their own individual journeys. But there's so much that I've accidentally learned that I can then apply to operate in this sort of, it's a scale up, but it's not in the big CapEx. We're not capital intensive. There's a lot of learnings that we don't have a big team, but it's all by design.
So what led you to the point where you decided that you want to make this? And impact is an incredible driver, right? It really drives us and self-actualizes us. But how do you quantify this impact in your day-to-day? So how do you know that, I've really achieved what I set out to do with One Moto?
Yeah, it's a lovely question. The answer is layered. So for me to look back or look forward to where is this impact, we don't have that control. So we can just we've got 5 values that the company's built upon. And the countries that we expand into, or our customers, they have their own remit of what impact is for them. So we can say EVs are more sustainable in terms of delivery and the CO2 and NOx and all of the other scientific stuff. But truthfully no one really cares. No one cares that much. It's starting to change with the ESG framework and policies and so on. Unfortunately, people don't care as much as we do. So although that could be our benchmark of X amount of millions of green kilometers that have been traveled saves X amount of CO2e, that's us. It's not really the customer's sort of driver. Every single customer's driver is profitability and reducing costs, bottom line profits, and we achieve that for them. Or if they apply our vehicle, so it's really their choice, then they get to achieve that. So although it's not our focal point, it's certainly one of the pillars that they can create their own success from. So that's where the impact is. But the big thing for me, being a motorcycle rider for most of my life, is the safety and the welfare of delivery riders. And they're treated in various parts of the world. They're not employees. They don't really have any rights. You've got variable income. They're sort of bankable. They're sort of not bankable. They have to work tremendous amount of hours to pay for their livelihoods. And that is something that we also address. So those three pillars of environment, profitability and welfare, they're our success stories, but we can only claim them as a facilitator if our customers buy and lease our vehicles.
And it's true what you're saying in terms of like how much people know about these things. I'm taking a course now, a climate tech course with Terra. And it's like fascinating and shocking how much we actually need to be doing. But can I wear my operator's hat for a minute and get a bit more practical?
I love when you do that. Yeah.
So, like you said, you've done it many times, right? You're a serial entrepreneur. Can you tell me a bit, what you've distilled the wisdom from like the previous ventures and like what you're doing differently in terms of running it more efficiently, your current business?
Yeah, so outsource as much as you can, but whilst maintaining some level of control. And because we were self-funded for launch, how much did it cost to set up an EV company? No one really knows unless you've done it. You can forecast that this is what I need. But for me, it was, how do you create an environment that is scalable? And I didn't know whether or not we had something scalable. I've built, say, local brands for myself, and I've built, as I come from a branding background, I built brands for companies. But to build a global brand, that was my vision, not for an egotistical point of view. I just want to build a global brand for impact. And how do you do that? You need to remain as agile as possible, as dynamic as possible. You need to be that outlier, because in the UAE where I'm based, there was two-wheeled EVs didn't exist. So I co-wrote legislation with the government, which, crikey, that's about relationships. So when you talk about wisdom, network is everything. The way you conduct yourself, the reputation you have that others talk about you is so incredibly valuable. So that comes down to your personal brand. And if you build your company on values, then you've got something that emotively the audience can connect with. Maybe not now, maybe in a few months and so on. But if you take, this is the beauty, there's so many other examples of, take Apple, for example. They're not talking about this camera's better and these pixels and so on. It's this can make your life better or more efficient. And that's the approach that we lean into. So with everything that we've learned, as I was saying at the beginning, the accidental learnings, you apply that to being agile. Is this towards the end goal? And if it is, do it. If it's not, don't.
Scrap it.
I've been discussing with many founders, and what you're saying is a bit controversial, if you like. Founders do not like to outsource anything, either because they want to prove to themselves and their investors that they can do it themselves, or kind of...
they're a bit control freaks sometimes, all sorts of things. Yeah.
How do you ensure the quality once you're outsourcing kind of core parts of what you're doing?
Work with the best. They've got the reputation. You've got the contracts. For me in business, I've been hurt so many times professionally, being let down, I don't like saying screwed over, but it really feels like that, right? It's hard to bounce back. But one of the things that I've learned is if it's in black and white, you've got your deliverables or my deliverables and your expectations, and whatever happens in life, you can just fall back to that default list of, this is what I promised you I'll do, and this is what I've received. That's the only negotiation point. That's the only conversation you need to have. That has been tremendous. That's the control side of things. That's really where your ego sits. I can do everything. Maybe. Do you need to? And that's where wisdom comes in. And I really am a firm believer in my other companies where there was lots of competition when it comes to branding and video production and so on, that you can see them as competition or work with them. And with what we do, we were the pioneers, the outliers, the doers, the dreamers, the innovators. We achieved something in markets that others daren't enter or hadn't thought of entering or chose not to enter, because they're tough markets to break through and become that first market entry point, right? So with what we've achieved is work with people. It expedites processes. It expedites your end goal. And crikey, a 4-year-old company, 2 of which were COVID years. Not saying they were great, but crikey, you have to be very agile in those environments for everyone. But we've managed to scale and built these solid foundations. So there's a lot of learnings, but collaboration is incredibly crucial if you work with the right people.
Can we zoom into those 2 years, the first 2 years that were pandemic and post-pandemic years, right? So quite special years, and they came with some challenges, particularly what you're talking about now, which is this idea of building your network, right? Building these opportunities with people wasn't always very easy in these first 2 years. So how did you navigate these challenges? And do you think that maybe they sort of set the way for further success, particularly because in these first 2 years you had to sort of deal with a lot of special circumstances, let's say?
It was tough. So we launched, got the trade license sorted in the UAE, that is December 2019. By 2020, January, bang, we're in the market. We've launched, we've got all the certifications that took 18 months to get, and we're here. A month later, COVID hits. There was a lot of cursing. What are we going to do? And we know we've got the vehicles. They're certified. We know they work because they've been tried and tested. Now we need to sell. How do we do that? You've got people that have a job. They don't have a job. No decisions are being made. No one knows where they are, what they're doing. So I took this sort of hemorrhaging approach to, for the rest of this year, we're not going to focus on sales. We're purely going to be focused on knowledge transfer, brand building, and just communication, and building a network within an industry of that 3PL, so third-party logistics, delivery aggregators, and so on. And we did. And it took longer than a year for COVID to sort itself out. So in the start of 21, it was still going, and it was flip-flopping between, yes, you're allowed out. No, you're not allowed out. This person has a job. They're relocated. You can't get in contact with them. It was really, really challenging. But then with the agility and the strategy of building the business, of you don't need a big team, keep your overheads low, look at the margins that you're operating on, where you don't have those big liabilities. And I thought, if I've built the framework that's solid to create this global brand, let's go and see. Let's go and see if we have this distributionable, franchisable model. And fortunately, yes was the answer.
How many vehicles do you have on the road today?
Loads.
Yeah.
Thousands.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we've got, so we design and build, we've got 3 mopeds, and a delivery van. And we've also got 2 new vehicles that are going to be launched in key markets this year, which should really complete that portfolio of products. And when we look at last mile, say the delivery of products and things, we've got that best in the market, within our class. And then when we start looking at the movement of people in urban areas, we believe we've got a solution for that as well. And then we don't need any more vehicles than that. We don't need the Mercedes that have the 20, 30 different types of this, that, and the other. Just have key models built in a modular or hyper-modular way. Then you don't need to keep reinventing the wheel.
And are you a bigger fan of B2B or the B2C clients? Like what it is that you...
Starting off is volume. So if we go down the B2C route, we needed bigger marketing budgets. We needed to really enter the market with great partners, which we didn't have the access to. And being in Dubai, there's 92,000 delivery bikes. I'm going to throw some stats your way,
yeah,
right?
We like
Please
numbers.
do. Like I know from, I was at Deliveroo,
That's
and
right, yeah.
we were present there. I'm not sure if they are
they're not using this yet.
No, not using it yet.
I have met them in London, but so there's 92,000 delivery bikes on the roads in Dubai that produce 260,000 tons of CO2 each year, which is equivalent to 290,000 acres of forest it would take to sequester just that CO2. That's just CO2 each year, which is 10 times the size of Paris. So that's just 92,000. If you take Vietnam, where there's 67 million motorcycles, UK 1.3 million, in India 37 million, Pakistan 20 million, we're just talking the 92,000 vehicles in Dubai. So when we look at the volumes of that delivery operator network and sales to keep us going, we only had one revenue stream, which was sales.
Yeah.
So B2B's been the focus, but then once some of those customers we're starting to get there. We haven't got there yet, but some of those customers that are B2B, then, you offer these vehicles, my son, my nephew, my daughter.
It paves the way for the...
It does, but you need
It's a
to
good
start,
introducer.
you need to start with one. But commercial vehicles aren't the sexy side of EV, are they? You know, the dancing car with the doors that do this, that's a bit sexier, but we're focused on bringing change and purpose.
So how many markets do you currently have vehicles in?
There's 13. Yeah.
Are any of them in Europe as a...
Yes. Yeah. So we've launched Croatia last year. We've signed a contract for another 7 countries in Eastern Europe.
Gotcha.
My focus is new market expansion. So we're in Chile, in Latin America. We've got 6 conversations with distributors and manufacturing partners over there. We've opened up Ethiopia in Africa. We've got Iraq. So markets that you don't expect.
Very interesting choices all around. So how do you go about, I mean, you kind of sort of gave us a hint, but how do you go about picking those markets, and what does it take to sort of launch this new chapter in a new market that might not be the same as the market you were operating before?
Yeah, it is a challenge, but again, once you have all the puzzle pieces, you can then sort of put them into, right, these are the edges. Got those sorted out. These are the middle bits that are this color, right? You put them into groups, and then you can start looking. Well, actually, there's a lot of similarities. The open up a new market is a paper admin exercise more than anything else. But we've got all the certifications, and every new market, when there's an application to homologate vehicles, well, here's what all of these countries have looked for. So you can't really ask any more questions than anyone else. So that's sort of how we do it. But how we find these new markets was us with outreach to start off with, but now we get inbound inquiries for to take on the distribution.
That's amazing. Can I change gears?
Yeah.
And kind of actually talk about the one thing you're very passionate about.
Go on then. What is it?
So what's the future? What's your capstone?
My capstone. So this is a capstone for me is the passion project. It's that end goal, that finesse of where you see your professional career heading towards. And for me, One Moto has always been a vehicle to get me to that capstone, that next sort of period of my life. And it's more of a philanthropic route. Something that means quite a lot to me, and it's to actually help the homeless. And many homeless, I'd say all of them, without too much research, have never chosen to be in that position. And through situational circumstance upheaval, whatever that may be, they're in a desperate situation. And some have chosen to accept it. Some just don't see their way out. And the longer it goes on, they're say out of society as they see it. The thought of being at that bottom rung of societal ladder, getting back into society, is going to be very challenging. Many give up. And not everyone's a junkie, not everyone's a drunk. There's just some very, very beautiful people out there that really need a helping hand. So one thing that I'm looking to do in every single market that we operate in the future, or near future, is to be able to offer One Moto vehicles to these homeless ladies and gentlemen. And if you take the delivery sector, last mile delivery, gig economy, 27% year-on-year growth as a market. It employs around 10% of the UK workforce. And I'd probably start it off in a country where you have homeless associations, philanthropic groups, and that established network of help for the homeless. So we give them vehicles. From those vehicles being given, the only requisite is, once they've been trained and so on, is that they need to do a minimum amount of deliveries. That's showing their commitment to getting back into society. From that, they then get accommodation, they get food. So that's a given. That's all part of their package and their contract. Every delivery they make, they get their money on a prepaid card. It's their banked money. They can't spend it everywhere. There'll be certain vendors, but they won't need to if they've got the basic necessities and essentials. But imagine after 2 years that homeless, let's use a guy, goes into an HR department applying for a job. And they say, what have you been up to? Tell us about what you've been up to for the past couple of years. What are you proud of? And they say, I've been self-employed. I've doubled my year-on-year growth. I've achieved this. I've 5,000 happy customers. And I've just put a deposit down on my first house.
Yeah.
That to me, I get emotional with this, but if you can give someone the opportunity to get themselves back into society, I think that's a very special place.
Have you tested it into any of the markets, or is it like a next step?
It's the next step. We're not financially in a position to do so. And where I said earlier that we've built and then we're raising, we're building, raising for global growth. And we've got a whole roadmap of what we're only raising what we need for global growth, unlike many others. And that will then enable us to start working once I have a little bit more free time and the team can focus on those certain key markets and growing the business. We've got those values that the company is built upon. So that legacy will continue without me being directly involved. Then I can start looking. But there's a green council in the UK with Brighton and Hove in the southeast. They've got a problem with homeless, but they're also very, very, I wouldn't say maverick, certainly not in a negative sense, but in terms of their want to look at things differently. So I think from my research and early conversations, that would be the place I'd start, unless there's someone listening to this in Greece and wants to start it over here. I'm all in.
It's very inspiring to see people that are socially minded entrepreneurs, and this impact that you talked about really has a full circle moment giving back to society. Where does this come from in your life? Like, what do you think is the source of
I actually know where the
socially
source is. And again, I don't want to get emotional. This should be a happy conversation, but it's really, really connected with me. I was 16 years old and I was lying on the carpet watching a TV show with my father, Panorama. It was a hard-hitting documentary series in the UK. And it was a cold February morning. It followed this guy called Andrew, a homeless guy. And he was walking the streets. You could tell how cold it was because everything about the view of this documentary was bitterly cold. And the guy was very articulate, very positive, which is strange for someone who's in the situation that he's in. And I'm 16. I've never met a homeless person. I can't really relate because I'm sat there in a nice warm house. Anyway, so I'm really engaged on how this person has got to that position. And he was saying that he had this very successful accountancy firm that he was a partner in. He had this beautiful house and a summer home and a wife and a toddler as a child. And he had this high-flying, luxurious, well-to-do lifestyle in London. And he had a nervous breakdown. And it meant that he lost everything. He lost his partnership, he lost his wealth, he lost his income. He was so devastated, he let his family down that he walked away from the family, gave them the house, and got to a point where he's on the streets. But he had this little glint in his eye that it's going to be okay. Very, very well spoken, very well mannered. And he had all the luxuries in life that you think bounce back, but he didn't. He couldn't, just through the mental trauma he was going through. And it followed his journey to this soup kitchen, just outside Regent's Park in North-East London. And he had a choice of minestrone or cream of mushroom. And he asked for minestrone soup. They gave him cream of mushroom. And he said, I'm terribly sorry. I did ask for minestrone soup. And this is cream of mushroom. If you don't have it, it's not a problem. And just left it on the counter. And these two people in the soup kitchen looked at him like, it's this cold. You haven't eaten. Why are you turning this down? He said, it's honestly, it's not a problem, but hopefully it will feed someone else. He walked back to the camera and the director said, Andrew, what happened? And he said, I asked for minestrone. They gave me cream of mushroom. It's not a problem. I'm just allergic to mushrooms, but I'll eat another time. And I was like, wow, this guy's he blew me away. And he said, well, there's something I've learned in life. It's nice to be important, but it's so important to be nice. And that sentence was that epitome of this guy had everything, and now he has what society would say is nothing, but he's got more than most people. And that really connected with me. That's why I want to help the homeless.
We should definitely introduce you to Schedia, which is like here an organization. When I came back to Greece, I said I want to support an organization, and of all of them, I picked Schedia, which is for the homeless, for the like similar reason, as in it's business people. It's like people that are like us that just had something wrong went in their life. They got bankrupt. So
I think my eyes opened the most to homelessness in the US, where you really see the level that, the people can fall under, especially when there's, little safety net. And that's particularly why I asked you this question about being a socially conscious, a socially minded entrepreneur, because the US is also the land where you see the best, companies and some of the best things being built out there. But you lack that sort of sentiment of perhaps giving back to the community at the end of it.
Yeah, it's very, very tough. And one of the triggers of being socially aware or wanting to create impact, again, comes from wisdom. I'm not saying I have it all, but I certainly have a focus on it. But it's also what you're doing. What do you do every day, and what you're doing it for? And yes, it could be more money. In the early years, it was, I want to be a millionaire by the time I'm 30. At 16, met a careers advisor. That's what I want to achieve. But do you need more money, or do you need a different strategy? Is money the answer to happiness, or do you just need enough? And if you can, yes, you could sell 1 million more books if you're an author, but I've got enough, and that's more than what I love. A lot of other people that are striving to, I have X amount in the bank, therefore I'm successful. But it doesn't automatically correlate to X money in the bank means I'm now successful, because you might have forfeited relationships, family, loved ones, not had the time to see your children growing up, because you've sacrificed so much. So it's what you're doing it for. And that's the question that I think a lot of founders need to ask themselves.
I love it. Very insightful.
Yeah.
Shall we close with a final question?
Yeah, I would love to hear, I would like to hear something about risk coming from you. So what's sort of one risk you took in your entrepreneurial career as a serial entrepreneur that, as we said, that paid off? And what's one risk you took that didn't quite pay off the way you thought it would?
Crikey, on the spot. When I was 16, I set up my first company, and it was an events company in the UK. So I'm 20 miles north of London is where I'm from. And I was 16, pre-mobile phone, right? And I wanted to create these boat cruises, parties up and down the River Thames. So I contacted the boat provider in London and booked the boat. I didn't have any money for a deposit. I was living at home, parents, on the phone. And I then needed 4 buses to transport 160 people on a certain date. I gave myself, I think it was about a 3 or 4 week time frame to sell these tickets. And at the buses, they were confirmed. Again, no deposit. I then printed off some tickets. I then had a network of people that were selling the tickets, my friends and peers, selling tickets. You sell 10, I'll give you 2 for free, so you can take your girlfriend or your boyfriend. And I managed to sell these 160 tickets. I didn't know whether the buses were going to turn up. I didn't know if the boat was going to be there. There was a lot risking, right?
Absolutely.
But the communication, there's a guy that's 16. Yes, he sounds young on the phone, but are they going to turn up? The buses were about 3 minutes late. It was the longest 3 minutes of my life. And all 160 people get on these 4 buses. We take ourselves up to London. And then I've never even seen the boat. I've seen a photo, but I've never been at the boat. I've never met the people. I don't have a way of communicating to say we're nearly there or we're a little bit late. I just had to be there. And this was part of the beauty. And the 160 people lined up along the embankment. And I went there with wads of cash because I had to pay the boat people. So I paid the bus company, I paid the boat people. But then it created this demand of, there's a rope for people to stand by. This is a proper event. I paid them. everyone went on the boat and everyone had a great time. I then started doing that once a month. So that risk of building a relationship, being personable and honouring my word and believing that others will honour theirs, that was the biggest risk at 16. So that was one that really did pay off. That really set the path of, okay, this is how you can do business, and you don't actually need any money to do so.
And definitely builds confidence, I would say.
Oh, yeah.
Like, especially at that age.
A sense of maturity and way of communicating with other business owners, I guess, as a teenager. What has not, I've been too trusting. So there's a company, I think legally I'm not allowed to mention the name, but there was a company that we trusted to take One Moto into a particular country. They were deceptive and fraudulent, which there was a lot of trust. We did all of our due diligence. We've got a big sort of legal framework behind us to protect us. And they did some terrible things. They defaulted on 7 parts of their contract. It was a case that was worth between $23 and $32 million, which for us to go through litigation, the Court of Arbitration in the UK, it was going to cost us 1.5 mil to go through that case. But we could walk away with between 23 and 32 mil. And this was 2022, so only a couple of years ago. And mentally, it broke me. I thought I was stronger than that, but I was absolutely broken. My relationship with my wife was stressed because why would anyone do this to me? I don't deserve this. Where's karma? Where's it? So that as a I'd say a risk that didn't pay off, that was a calculated risk that should have paid off, but through the, let's say, ill feelings of the other parties, and just the way that they conduct themselves, that was a risk that certainly didn't pay off. And at some point, I thought if I put in 1.5 into this court case, yes, 3 lawyers in different countries said, yeah, you're absolutely going to win, no questions about it. But the execution, are you going to get paid? And in the end, we just had to walk away from it. So that bitter taste that someone's won, someone's beaten you by doing wrong, that's tough. Whereas if I did the same, I'd expect to be locked up and lose everything. But some people just seem to get away with it.
It's also interesting how I'm really, what you said resonated with me, that betrayal of trust sometimes reflects on a personal level too. Like somebody betrayed your trust, but you take it upon yourself, it starts impacting your life. It's kind of a difficult thing to break.
It's so terrible because you have that, what could I have done better? You question yourself, did I put too much belief? But I can't walk around being cynical. That's not the way I've been raised. I would not be a happy human being if I constantly think I need to protect myself because I can't trust this person. There's a lot of those sour business people. Maybe they've just got a bit more wisdom than I do.
So we're at Doers today. Is it your first time in Athens?
It is my first time and I absolutely love it. I truly, truly love this city.
It's an interesting, chaotic blend of different things, right? But
yeah, you've got that urban chaos, which I'm saying in a positive sense, it works. But then you've got this modern environment, but you just have to look up and look into the middle distance, and you've got this heritage and architecture and history, 2,500 years or whatever it is, of vision, of legacy, that we're lucky if we get remembered for one generation. What are we actually going to build? And I think this is a big part of the story of Doers and what we're here for. And every single person that's here at the event is, what are we doing to create a legacy? Do we need to? Not everyone has to. What are we doing to pass on that mantle of betterment for the next generation, or for whatever your purpose and your capstone is?
Absolutely. Adam, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Sorry I got emotional, but there's a few things that mean a tremendous amount to me. So thanks for listening to my story.
And there's few stories that are as powerful as the emotional ones. So I think you did us a favor. Thank you so much, Adam Ridgway, CEO and founder of One Moto, our first guest today. EUROPEBUILDS live from the Doers Summit in Athens.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of EUROPEBUILDS, where we show that the European ecosystem is no longer an underdog story.
If you liked our episode and want to hear more, follow EUROPEBUILDS on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Born's YouTube channel.